Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today we are in the presence of a car that has grown exponentially in the customers' preferences over the last, I don't know, 7 years. It has grown so much that it is now Mercedes-Benz's best-selling product. We're talking about the Mercedes-Benz GLC. Technically, this is just the second generation GLC, but before the GLC became the GLC in 2015, it was sold under a different name. It was sold as the GLK. Mercedes, however, changed that in 2015 when they changed the way they named their cars to make the whole naming and lineup a bit more cohesive. And they started naming their SUVs starting with the GL acronym and then adding another letter depending on the segment the car is running in. So this is the GLC, the second generation model, and it is a car that was launched late last year, and it finally arrived in my garage for a testing session. And it does come with a lot of improvements compared to the previous generation model. We're talking air suspension, we're talking rear wheel steering, we're talking new lighting technology, a new interior, new instrument cluster, new infotainment system, and so many other improvements. And today we're gonna go over all of them. Now, in terms of design, not a lot has changed. This is more of an evolutionary step up, if you will. The car falls in line with the general designs of all of the Mercedes-Benz models. What they pointed out is the fact that the headlight is now connected directly to the grille, and the grille does have tiny silver arrow logos in it. And yeah, it does look good. The car we're testing today has the AMG package. You can recognize it by the front bumper. We have the AMG 19-inch wheels on this car, and AMG, I don't know, floor mats and seats inside. But in terms of design, not a lot has changed. Mercedes-Benz stuck to its design. They only made incremental changes here and there. And I have to applaud them for that, because if it works, why change it? Of course, other manufacturers are trying out new things, but Mercedes-Benz said, you know what? This is our best-selling product. We're not going to tinker with the recipe too much. We still have exposed door sills. The doors still don't cover the door sills, and as a big change, the rear view mirrors are now attached to the door in an effort to make the car a bit more aerodynamic. In that regard, I have to say, contrary to current trends, Mercedes-Benz decided not to increase the size of this car in every direction. So they made it a bit longer and a bit wider, but it is also a bit shorter. And that was done, according to Mercedes-Benz, in order to improve its aerodynamic coefficient, which is at 0.29 right now. And they are quite proud of it and say that this aerodynamic coefficient is not there only to reduce the fuel consumption, but also to make the car more refined. We'll see about that when we start driving it. Around the back, it's the same story. We have incremental changes done to the car. The tail lights have been slightly altered, and they do look pretty good. And if you get the advanced lighting package, the car does a little dance with the headlamps and the tail lights whenever you lock and unlock it. Speaking of which, another new technology the GLC is bringing forward is digital light. Now, you probably heard of it on Audi models, on Range Rovers, and so on. It's a technology developed by Magneti Marelli, and it is offered to a number of car manufacturers. Basically, what you see here is a headlight that has 1.3 million micro mirrors in it in order to project light incredibly precisely on the road. And you can figure out which car has this option by the bluish hue it has inside. And I have to say, they work brilliantly at night. But basically, you would expect that since you are driving a car with 2.6 million micro mirrors guiding your way. But they are incredibly precise at cutting off the light around cars in front of you. And they work absolutely brilliantly. They can even project warnings on the road ahead of you. But the thing is, I noticed that you can't really see them if you have the head-up display turned on. It's quite a mix mash between them. So the boot If you're going for a plug-in hybrid, such as this car, still has 470 liters of space on tap for your needs. But if you need more, maybe just go for a regular GLC, not a plug-in hybrid. We're gonna talk about the drivetrain choices later on. Now let's hop inside and see how things shape up in there. Once you get inside the new GLC, you will find some familiar features if you've driven a modern day Mercedes. And I'm referring to the general layout of the dashboard, which is quite similar to the one found on the S-Class, on the C-Class, and so on. So we're talking about the new setup for the infotainment system and the MBUX system, Mercedes-Benz User Experience System, is probably the best in the business right now. And that's because it is incredibly easy to use and it is incredibly responsive and it looks absolutely brilliant. But that's not necessarily new. What is new on the GLC is the screen, 12 inches in the diagonal, and this whole layout with 3 air vents at the top, 2 on the sides, and this huge bit of trim right here on the dash. In this case, we're talking about open pore wood and it feels really nice to the touch. As a matter of fact, the whole car feels incredibly well built. Everything is sturdy and it's quite obvious that Mercedes-Benz is working hard on trying to fix the image that it has gotten recently, that it doesn't have good build quality. Well, this car definitely has it, and the materials used are of great quality as well. We have leather on top of the door card, soft touch materials everywhere you will have any contact with the door panel, and everything looks and feels exactly as you would expect from a Mercedes-Benz. Now, behind the steering wheel, we have a new instrument cluster. It's a screen as everyone expects it to be. It's a 12.3-inch screen, and it has a design that we're already familiar with. We've seen it on a number of other cars as well. Unfortunately, the steering wheel has also been adopted from the C-Class and E-Class and so on, and it has these touch-sensitive buttons on it that simply drive me crazy. I'm not a huge fan of this system, and I hope Mercedes-Benz listens to the feedback we're giving them and they will follow in the footsteps of Volkswagen, which has announced recently that it will drop these touch-sensitive buttons on its future models. One area that I can criticize is this one, where we have a lot of gloss black, which will gather a lot of dust and fingerprints, and it will get scratched up in time. But I see that Mercedes-Benz is following the trends. We have 2 cup holders over here, a wireless charging pad, and a lot of storage space in this armrest. As for the seats, they are very comfortable, a bit on the harsher side of things. They are quite stiff and they do offer great side support, but if you have a wider back, they might feel a bit narrow. But overall, I spent a few hours in them yesterday and I haven't had an issue whatsoever. And the visibility is incredible up front. You can see everything around you perfectly. I would have preferred slightly bigger side mirrors, but Mercedes-Benz said that they used these smaller mirrors to make the car more aerodynamic and reduce the wind noise at higher speeds. I guess they know what they're doing. That's about it. Let's hop in the back and see how things shape up in there. Sitting in the back of the GLC, well, everything is as spacious as you would expect such a car to be. Plenty of knee room, plenty of headroom. I'm 6 feet tall and about 250 pounds. The seat in front of me is adjusted to my comfortable driving position, and I have no issue fitting over here in the back. So everything is up to par if you ask me. So not a lot to complain. The materials, the build quality is just as good as up front. We have a climate control screen over here because the car has 4-zone climate control, and a phone holder over here on the armrest. The materials are, as I said, of great quality, and the seats are comfortable. So yeah, no issues whatsoever. Now that we hopped behind the wheel of the new GLC, let's talk about the technical side of things. So what are we actually looking at? We're looking at a completely new model, which comes with a very wide variety of drivetrains available, both on petrol and diesel fuel. And we're talking about 2-liter engines most of all of them hybridized to some extent, because even the most basic GLC 200 has a mild hybrid setup. But at the top end of the spec tier, you will find plug-in hybrid choices like the one we're driving today, because today we are on board the most powerful version in the range. It's called the GLC 400E, and that 400 no doesn't mean we have a 4-liter engine under the hood. It just shows how powerful this car is and how much power it can rely on. So under the hood we have a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine, good for 252 horsepower and up to 400 newton meters of torque, and that is helped out by an electric motor that's included in the transmission, and can deliver up to 136 horsepower and 440 newton meters of torque. In total, the car can rely on 381 horsepower and 650 newton meters of torque. And as you probably saw right now, it's quite fast off the line, as it can do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 5.6 seconds, and then go up to a top speed of 237 kilometers an hour. All of that power is sent to the 4 wheels of the car using the new 4MATIC all-wheel drive system and a 9-speed automatic gearbox. This new 4MATIC system, according to Mercedes-Benz, has a new transfer case and has a power split of 55% for the rear axle and 45% for the front axle. But of course, those ratios will vary depending on your needs and if you're in off-road, for example. Now, the hybrid setup also includes a huge battery at the back, as I already said. That's a 31.2 kilowatt hour battery housed above the rear axle in the boot. That battery, according to Mercedes-Benz, should be good enough to allow you to travel on electric power alone between 100 and 140 kilometers with a single charge. Well, most of the time, car manufacturers do, let's say, embellish those test results. Not in this case. I picked up the car with a battery state of charge of 90%. And guess how many kilometers I covered with it? That's right, 90 kilometers. So I'm suspecting that if the car was at 100% charge, I could have covered 100 kilometers with a single charge, no issues whatsoever. And I did so in one of the busiest cities in Europe, without cutting on any creature comforts, without using eco mode or anything like that. I used electric mode to make sure the internal combustion engine doesn't kick in, but that's about it. That is incredibly impressive. So for the first 100 kilometers covered around town, my fuel consumption was 1 liter per 100 kilometers covered. Amazing. Furthermore, if you drive this car without any charge in the battery around town, the energy consumption, the fuel consumption, is around 8 liters, 9 liters per 100 kilometers covered, which isn't bad at all, because the car will run in hybrid mode, basically setting off in electric mode, coasting using electricity, and turning off the internal combustion engine whenever you're decelerating towards, I don't know, a stoplight or an intersection and stuff like that. And the car actually knows where you are, knows if there's traffic ahead of you, and if you lift off the gas pedal, it will regenerate, use regenerative braking more or less depending on the situation to recuperate as much energy as possible. Mercedes-Benz says that the regenerative brakings can deliver up to 100 kilowatts back into the battery in terms of power, charging power, which is impressive. Speaking of which, this car has fast charging for its battery. It's something you don't really see on any other plug-in hybrid models apart from Mercedes-Benz ones, and you can use chargers of up to 60 kilowatts. Basically, you can replenish the battery in about 30 minutes. Of course, if you don't want to use a fast charger, you can use a slow charger as well. The car can use 11 kilowatt chargers too. That's huge compared to other manufacturers which usually limit their cars to 3.6 kilowatts or 7.4 if you're lucky. I've seen electric cars that can't reach 60 kilowatts on a fast charger, so this is impressive. To put things in perspective, the battery in this car is as big as the original BMW i3's battery. Yeah, that kind of progress wasn't done overnight, but we're already starting to see batteries with more energy density, and we're starting to see evolution being implemented. So I'm quite optimistic for the future. As for the gearbox, it works fine around town. It's comfortable. It does have a couple of hiccups here and there, but it's fine. It's not as refined as the ZF8 Speed, but Mercedes-Benz wants to use its own gearbox, and we can totally understand that. It's fine. It's not the best in the segment, but it's fine. Most of the time you'll be driving in electric mode anyway around town, so nah. Now, on a series of bureaus, that fuel consumption went up to about 5.5 liters per 100 kilometers covered, which is fine in my book, considering the power and the resources you have on this car and the weight. And on the highway, that fuel consumption went up to 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers covered, which is once again fine. I kept it at 130 kilometers an hour, and the car did great. What impressed me the most is how refined the suspension is and how quiet the car is overall. The suspension, let's talk about it for a second. Multi-link up front, multi-link in the back, and on plug-in hybrid models, because of the extra weight on the rear axle, the car tips the scales at 2.3 tons empty. Because of that extra weight on the rear axle, all plug-in hybrids come with air suspension at the back, and that makes this car incredibly comfortable. I didn't hear a squeak out of the suspension. It was absolutely brilliant all around, and it dealt with all sorts of humps in the road and cracks and so on, potholes, brilliantly. If you want this air suspension on a non-plug-in hybrid version though, you can get it. It's an optional extra, and I totally recommend it. But I have a hunch that even the normal GLC without air suspension will be quite awesome. Now, in terms of ride refinement, the engineers took extra steps to make this car as quiet as possible, especially since you would be driving in electric mode for extended periods of time. And in electric mode, as we all know, there's no internal combustion engine to drown out the sound. So they filled every single space they could with sound deadening material, and they took extra precautions to make sure this car is as quiet as possible. For example, all cars come with a special windscreen that's double glazed to make sure that it cuts out as much road noise as possible. The same goes for the new smaller side mirrors. They've been done in this shape in order to cut on the noise as well. So they took extra steps to make it as quiet as comfortable as possible, and they succeeded. Another novelty on the GLC is the fact that you can now get rear wheel steering. That's something you couldn't get up until now, and if you choose this option, this car also has it. The turning radius will be 11 meters compared to 11.8 meters on normal GLC models without the rear wheel steering option. Yeah, that's quite an improvement, and I felt it around town. The car can steer its rear wheels up to 4.5 degrees, and you can feel it when parking it. Of course, Mercedes-Benz also claims that this will help when driving in a dynamic fashion, because over 60 kilometers an hour, the rear wheels will steer in the same direction as the front ones to make the car more dynamic. Well, I didn't really push this car to the limit. I did try sport mode a couple of times. It hides its weight really well, but it's not exactly a sporty car. You won't be disappointed though, because it can oversteer, which is pretty nice. At the end of the day, yes, this is a rear-wheel drive car at its core, so it's only natural to expect it to oversteer. But overall, yeah, I did enjoy it a lot. That said, what can we say about the GLC as a conclusion? Well, in my book, this is the new king of the segment. It's a segment where it has to rival the BMW X3 and the Audi Q5, first of all, and other cars such as the Volvo XC60, for example. And I think this is the new king of the segment. Of course, all of its rivals are a bit old, and we're expecting new models. The X3 should come out this year, the Q5 next year, and the XC60, we're also waiting for a new version in the near in the near future. So overall, yeah, this is the new king of the segment. But of course, all this performance, technology, and comfort does come with a price. Pricing for the GLC, depending on the market you're in, will start at under 60,000 euros. Most countries between 55 and 58,000 euros. This car has a price tag of 91,000 euros because it's the top spec GLC 400, and it's fitted with some options worth about 16,000 euros. So yeah, please let me know in the comment section what you think of the car, if you're interested in buying one, and if you think it's the best in the segment right now. Until next time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and of course don't forget to feed your passions. Ciao.